Cassie and Mike had been close friends since middle school. People always confused them for a couple, but the truth was that they were just close friends. They both had a fascination with the supernatural that most people wouldn't subscribe to. Now in their 20s, they have found a new hobby to quench that fascination: ghost hunting. On weekends and holiday breaks, they like to travel to different places across America that were rumored to be haunted. They've been to asylums, prisons, and just good old-fashioned houses said to house restless souls. Their dream was to find proof of the supernatural. They would take their cameras to record any paranormal events, though their track record was dubious at best. They had recorded creaking floorboards and odd sounds, usually created by the clanking of old pipes or the push from unnoticed drafts, but they hadn't truly found any concrete evidence of the supernatural. They just needed one good location, one good story of a haunting to tell. They yearned for it. They had been shooting an investigation in a supposedly haunted house in Alabama. It had all the makings for the typical haunted house. The house was old and creepy, still furnished in an old-fashioned style. It had been the site of multiple crimes, including a murder. The only thing missing to make it the perfect haunted house was ghosts. All the footage that Cassie and Mike obtained was of them randomly yelling, "Hey, are there any spirits who want to come forward?" Or, "We mean you no harm." To be honest, they all looked pretty stupid. When the two were finished, they packed up their equipment and returned to the small motel that they were currently staying at. There was a small bar just up the road, and the two decided to put their things away and then venture off to it to drink their frustrations away. The place was small with only 5 tables, and the actual bar itself. The regular bar patrons were quietly drinking away as they came in. They ordered their drinks and they sat down. "We're never gonna find a real haunting," Cassie said after a minute of silence. "Are we just wasting our time?" "Maybe," said Mike. "Hey, but at least we're making memories with it." "Still, just once I would like to see some real paranormal activity," she said morosely. An elderly man sitting at one of the nearby tables interrupted them. It was clear that he was drunk. "You wanna go to a real haunted place? You should head up to the Berenstain Plantation. A little known except for the people around these parts, but certainly the most haunted place you'll ever find." "Pete, shut up and just drink your beer," the man next to him said. "What? These two kids want to see some ghosts. Well, let them see some." The man hiccuped before taking another drink. "The dead should be left in peace," his friend said. "Peace? Peace? There's no peace for the souls who died here." Pete turned to Cassie and Mike. "That place was the spot of great evil." "What's so interesting about this place?" Mike cut in. "What makes it such a hot spot?" "Why, the history, of course," the man exclaimed excitedly. "Story goes that over 20 workers perished at the hands of Berenstain's wife, Annalise. She enjoyed doing things to the workers. It was like a game to her. Horrible, horrible things that can't even be spoken. And she did it all just for fun. Sometimes she would use an excuse or a mistake that the worker did, but other times she didn't even bother with that." "Was she ever brought to justice?" asked Cassie. "Well, not by the law, but she got what was coming for her," the man said. "It all came to a head one day when Annalise was beating up one of the workers named Margaret. Margaret's brother, Samuel Young, took a giant branch from an old oak tree and stabbed Annalise through the stomach. She died, and Samuel was taken up and he was taken care of for what he had done. It's said that he was smiling the whole time, even in death. "Oh, stop it," the other man said. "It's just a scary story. Who knows how much, if any of it, is even true?" "It is so." Pete turned to the young friends. "If you don't believe me, then go see it for yourselves. Keep going south and then make a left on Parsons Road. You'll know you're there when you see the two large iron gates." Cassie and Mike looked at each other and shrugged. They had nothing better to do. Might as well check out this detour. They got up and thanked Pete before going back to their cheap motel room. They were too tired from the previous investigation, and they wanted to be sharp if they were actually going to go check this place out. They would have to wait until the next morning. When the sun rose, Cassie and Mike packed their things and headed in the direction that old Pete had given them. They almost turned around when they came across the iron gates that he had spoken about. They made it up to them, and they were wrapped in overgrown plants. That wasn't all that they were wrapped in. The gates were all chained and bolted shut, so the two friends had no choice but to abandon their mode of transportation, their car. They climbed the property walls with the help of the great overgrown vines entangling most of the property. After a minute, they finally made it over, careful not to do any damage to their cameras, and then they began to walk. The manor was about half a mile away from the gates. Looking around, one could easily imagine a thriving place where the plant life had since taken over. To the right of the manor was an old wooden building that looked like it had been eaten away by termites and harsh weather. This is probably where the workers stayed at. They would visit there after the manor. The once undoubtedly beautiful manor was now missing its front door. Cobwebs shrouded every corner and everything was thick with dust. There was a large suitcase in the middle of the room that stopped at a small piece of floor before breaking off in two directions. On that floor was a giant painting. It was a portrait of two people. They turned their cameras on and slowly made their way up the stairs. Once on the landing, they took an up-close look at the painting. There was a stern-looking man standing behind a chair. He was older and he looked very mean. This had to have been Master Berenstain. In the chair sat a beautiful Southern belle, her smile warm and her blue eyes hypnotizing. Annalise certainly didn't look like the monster she was rumored to be. If anything, her husband was the one who looked evil. They decided to go up the left set of stairs. They made it to an old door and they pushed it open, causing a loud creaking sound. This room looked to be a home office. They walked to the giant desk in the middle of the room, recording everything that they could see. They rummaged through old documentation for a long time before they found anything of interest. "Hey, look at this," Mike said as he was flipping through a giant booklet. Cassie walked over and checked it out. On each page was a picture of a worker, their name, and any information pertaining to them, including the date and cause of death. My God, there has to be over 50 people in here, Cassie said breathlessly. "Look at this," Mike said. "Most of these show how and when they died, but some of them have the cause of death left blank." They stood silently, almost as if not wanting to insult the dead with their inadequate words. Suddenly, they heard the sound of feet frantically running down the hallway. At that exact same time, their cameras stopped working, leaving pixels and white noise as the only things the screen were picking up. The white noise kept getting louder and louder until it was turning into almost a screeching sound. When it became too unbearable, they finally turned the cameras off. There was a strong sense of not being alone. "I think somebody wants their privacy," Mike said, unnerved. They had always wanted to experience the supernatural, and it seemed like they had finally gotten their wish. They both walked out of the room shakily, following the directions of the footsteps. They kept walking when a door to the right burst open. Cassie let out a scream of shock as Mike felt like his heart was going to explode. They paused before slowly walking into the room. It was a bedroom, huge with a 4-poster bed, and judging by the decor, it would have belonged to a woman. "I think this was Annalise's room," said Cassie. They walked around the room slowly. Cassie ended up at a grand nightstand adorned with gold trimming and beautiful little trinkets. She picked up an oddly shaped painted bowl. Inside was a pearl necklace and a few rings. The material of the bowl was like nothing she had ever felt, though. It was almost like ivory. She looked up at her reflection when she noticed 2 distinct holes reflecting on the other side of the bowl. Curious, she turned the bowl around to get a better look at it. She stared for a while as if trying to put a puzzle together when she shrieked and dropped it, jewelry flying everywhere. "It's a skull," she yelled. What? Mike said. "The bowl, it's a skull, or at least a part of one." She looked like she was going to be sick. "I want to get out of here now." "Just wait," Mike said, stopping Cassie from sprinting out of the room. "When we finally find a place that looks like it's truly haunted, this is what we came here for." No. I didn't come here to touch a human skull," Cassie said angrily. "I'm guessing whoever it belonged to didn't want their head used as a decorative dish." "Cassie, we've hit the jackpot. You can't seriously." He stopped, looking over Cassie's shoulder. Cassie turned around and stared in amazement. Standing in the doorway was Annalise. She looked like exactly how she was in the picture. A large hoop-skirt dress, a large necklace adorning her neck. Delicate chocolate brown curls were styled beautifully upon her head. She was gorgeous with delicate features and large eyes. The only difference was that those beautiful facial features were set in a furious expression. "You dare come in my room?" The voice seemed distant, like it didn't belong in this plane of existence. "Ah!" Mike screamed, the back of his shirt torn from what looked like a scratch mark. "Get out, get out, get out!" the spirit screamed. This time, Mike didn't have a problem with leaving, and they both booked it, running down the hallway. They thought leaving the manor would be enough, but to their surprise, they saw that the ghost of Annalise was following them right behind them. They made it outside, but Cassie tripped on a root pushed out of the unkempt ground, and she yelped as she had twisted her ankle. Mike knelt beside her to try to help her up, but a force pushed him to the ground. They both looked up as the spirit loomed over them. "I shall take the skin off your backs," and she raised her hand in the air. The friends closed their eyes in anticipation, but the blows never came. They opened their eyes to see Annalise looking behind them in fear. They cautiously turned around, scared of what they would see. Behind them stood a large man in old, worn-out clothing. He was glaring at Annalise as if he was daring her to bring the whip down. Both spirits stood there for a moment before Annalise disappeared. Cassie and Mike turned to the man in fear. His facial expression softened as he looked upon them. "You're okay now," he said in that same distant way. "My name is Samuel." "Are you Samuel Young?" Cassie asked. "So you've heard of me," he said with a tint of pride in his voice. "The lady of the house feared hell, so she stayed in this plane. I wasn't about to let her torment these spirits in the grounds too hurt to find rest. I lived a worker for their family," he continued, "but I died a hero, and now I am my own master as well as the greatest nightmare of Annalise Berenson." They were silent for a moment before Mike spoke. "It still lives on," Mike said. He felt a sense of hopelessness, like evil would live forever. Hatred, evil, it's always there. "I know," said Samuel simply. "And there will always be people like me to put a stop to it." And with that, Samuel disappeared. The friends that left the property, their career as ghost hunters was over, but a lightness they hadn't experienced before was just beginning to bloom.